just woke up to luxury goods are all made in China.
They dress the richest people in the world. They walk the Met Gala like gods, and they charge more for a jacket than most people make in a month. But luxury brands like Chanel, Gucci, Balenciaga, and Louis Vuitton have a secret. They're not just fashion houses, they're controversy factories in disguise. And if you thought it was all glam, gold, and red carpets, buckle up. Because behind every iconic runway, there's a scandal they hope you'll forget. But today, we're naming names. Let's start with Gucci, often called the crown jewel of fashion innovation. In 2018, they released a black turtleneck that covered half the face, with bright red lips stitched into the fabric. If that sounds suspiciously like blackface, that's because it was, in 2018. How that design ever got past the boardroom is still a mystery, but the internet didn't let it slide. Twitter erupted. Activists condemned it. Gucci issued an apology calling it a misunderstanding. You know, like when your $900 sweater accidentally resembles centuries of racial trauma. Just a little hiccup in haute couture. But Gucci wasn't done. In 2021, they teamed up with Balenciaga for a collection called The Hacker Project. Supposedly a bold statement on fashion plagiarism, they released $5,000 bags combining both logos, mashing them up like a glitchy Instagram filter and calling it post-ironic art. Critics called it lazy, consumers called it confusing, but Gucci, they laughed all the way to the bank. Then there's Chanel, the epitome of French sophistication, pearls, and tweed, and apparently plagiarism. In 2019, Chanel unveiled $1,300 boomerangs. Yes, boomerangs, branded as luxury sporting accessories. The problem? The boomerang is a sacred Aboriginal object, not a beach toy for rich kids. Indigenous leaders slammed the brand for cultural theft. Chanel shrugged and moved on. But that wasn't the first or last time Chanel faced scrutiny. Go back a few decades and you'll find Coco Chanel herself, the brand's founder, tangled in something far worse than bad product decisions. Declassified French intelligence documents revealed that Coco Chanel was a Nazi informant during World War II, operating under the codename Westminster. That's right. While we romanticize her signature perfume and the little black dress, her political affiliations tell a darker story the brand rarely acknowledges. Next, Balenciaga, the brand that prides itself on being edgy, until it flew right off the cliff. In late 2022, Balenciaga released an ad campaign featuring children holding teddy bears dressed in bondage gear, studs, leather, harnesses, and kids in the same shot. The internet exploded. Celebrities like Kim Kardashian, once Balenciaga's biggest ambassador, went radio silent, then made a half apology, then quietly moved on. Balenciaga tried to blame the production team. The production team blamed creative freedom. Nobody took accountability. And the most disturbing part? In another campaign image, a document from a United States Supreme Court case about child exploitation was spotted lying on a table. Symbolism? Coincidence? Or something more sinister? We may never know. But for many, that was the final straw. And then there's Louis Vuitton, the face of high-end travel chic. In 2020, they dropped a Jamaican-inspired sweater in green, yellow, and red. Just one issue. The Jamaican flag is green, yellow, and black, not red. So not only did they misrepresent a national symbol, they also sold it to the world as authentic. The backlash was swift. Jamaicans called it lazy, tone-deaf, and exploitative. LV pulled the item and issued the usual statement about design miscommunication. The kind of excuse you make when you didn't bother Googling Jamaican flag before printing thousands of sweaters. But Louis Vuitton has a track record. In 2013, during a Shanghai fashion show, they dressed models in Native American headdresses for a handbag launch in China, with zero connection to indigenous culture. Once again, they reduced sacred symbols to fashion props in pursuit of aesthetic shock value. And we can't forget Prada. In one of the most baffling marketing moves ever, they displayed window figurines that eerily resembled blackface, dark brown skin, exaggerated red lips, and cartoonish features. Prada claimed they were fantasy creatures. The public didn't buy it. the backlash was brutal. Prada pulled the figures, apologized, and, of course, launched a diversity council. Because what better way to deal with racism than with a committee? Even Prada's sub-brand Miu Miu didn't escape scandal. In 2023, they featured underweight teenage models in ultra-short skirts for a campaign that looked more like a cry for help than a celebration of fashion. Critics slammed them for glamorizing the over-sexualization of young girls. Miu Miu made no meaningful response. Business as usual. So here's the twist. After all these scandals, after all the cultural appropriation, offensive imagery, and hollow apologies, none of these brands truly suffered. Gucci still sells $2,000 loafers. Chanel still dominates perfume counters worldwide. Balenciaga, they're back at Paris Fashion Week like nothing happened. Why? Because luxury isn't just about products, it's about fantasy. These brands aren't selling coats or bags, they're selling dreams, illusions of status, power, and exclusivity. And for millions of consumers, that fantasy outweighs the facts. Scandals come and go, Twitter forgets, the headlines move on, but the brands, they remain, if anything, stronger. But make no mistake, this isn't accidental. There's a pattern here. These incidents aren't isolated, they're symptoms of a broken system. A system run by boards that are just too white, too wealthy, and honestly, too disconnected. Creative teams that seem to believe shock equals sales. And marketing departments that, well, wait for backlash before reacting. And only then with the safest, vaguest apology they can issue without losing too much face. In the world of luxury, controversy isn't a bug, it's a feature. Every scandal becomes a headline. Every cancellation turns into curiosity. The more outrageous the campaign, the louder the conversation. And honestly, the more valuable the brand becomes in the digital echo chamber. Even their mistakes, they're part of the marketing strategy. So, the next time you see a $5,000 coat on your feed or a $3,000 handbag inspired by culture, ask yourself, are you buying fashion? Or are you buying into a machine that profits off ignorance, erasure, and exploitation? Because in the world of luxury, glamour fades, but receipts, they last forever. Subscribe for more exposés on fashion, fame, and the industries we blindly trust.